Hi, welcome to the Anthology podcast by Artists Aside, where we spotlight the hidden heroes behind some of your favourite albums.
Today we are diving into the hugely successful record Lux by Rosalía, released in November 2025. It broke the record for the biggest debut day for a female Spanish-speaking artist and reached 42.1 million streams within 24 hours of its release. It is made up of 18 tracks in 13 different languages, features contributions from Bjork, Yves Juma, and has spoken word from Patti Smith. The album was nominated for Best Latin Album at the American Music Awards and Best Music Video for Birdtime.
And today, if you can't tell, we are in a studio space at the BBC Philharmonic in Media City. I'm going to join one of her collaborators, Daníel Bjarnason, who conducted the London Symphony Orchestra on the album. How are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
And you had a concert last night in Manchester, yes?
Yeah. Concert yesterday and one tonight as well. Working with BBC Philharmonic this week. So, yeah.
What's that like working with them?
Wonderful. It's a great orchestra. I was with them once before, many years ago, doing a project by music by Jóhann Jóhannsson, my fellow Icelander, late great composer. So I haven't been here in a while, and it's really nice to be back.
Great. And how did you get into composing, conducting, playing with orchestras? How did that begin?
Well, I started playing piano fairly young, about 6. But I was also doing a lot of sports, played a lot of football, and that sort of took over for a while in my teenage years, and then I came back into music, and it sort of happened organically. It was just the most interesting thing for me. It was a big choice, actually, choosing between football and music at one point when I was a teenager. But I think today I'm happy about the choice I made. I still watch football, but I don't play it. And yeah, it was mostly playing piano to begin with, and then sort of composing was always in the back of my mind. I started like doing it as a teenager, a little bit, writing these tunes, and then the conducting sort of came later when I actually through sort of getting students and friends to sort of play my own music and doing that, and then working with student orchestras, and it's sort of something I really love doing. And
was it just that passion that sparked the choice between like choosing between sport and music? It was just which one you felt you enjoy more? Or?
Yeah, it was just these crossroads in life sometimes. I mean, I was quite good at football. I was like on the national team at youth level. So it was actually kind of a big decision. But at that time, there was nobody who said like, you should really make a career in football, because that might be quite good for you. But it was just, music was sort of taking over in my mind, and I was much more interested in sort of just practicing piano and going to concerts than going to football practice and doing that. So I sort of made the decision quite radically in a way, because it was not a pragmatic thing, and like I was actually much better at football than music at that time.
I think sometimes that's how these decisions are made. Like it just pops into your head, and then you're like, that's where it's going.
It was my gut feeling somehow. I just knew that this was something I had to do, and it worked out. Like it never sort of stopped being interesting to me or exciting. Like I could have, I guess, always reverted back to sport. That's like if it hadn't been the right thing, but it was the right thing for me.
And what were your early projects like when you first kind of started taking music as a career?
I was just very much, I feel very lucky to have grown up or sort of been in Iceland. I actually lived in Copenhagen as a teenager, and that was where I sort of made this decision. And then I actually went back to Iceland for music school. And at that time, it was such, and it still is, I guess, a very sort of rich musical landscape in the city. Like Bjork was really exploding at the height of her fame. Sigur Rós were becoming very famous, and like the string quartet that was playing with them, they were all like my friends from music school, like these 4 girls in Anima string quartet. So I got to know all the sort of Sigur Rós guys quite well, and that is sort of how it was in Iceland. Everybody was very connected, and then I ended up working with them quite a bit as well, and there's some of them very good friends of mine today. And it didn't feel like it was so much like I'm going into classical music. It was very much just I'm doing music, and classical music and writing for orchestra and playing piano is like the most exciting thing, but that doesn't mean I don't also do all these other things with other musicians and other people. And that, for a lot of Icelandic musicians, I think is sort of just like part of their upbringing, part of their DNA. And also it happened that at this time, because of Björk, because of Sigur Rós, like international spotlight was falling quite sort of heavily on Iceland musically. So you didn't feel isolated in that way. You felt sort of quite like you were in the middle of things.
Like there's something bubbling and you were good at getting to be a part of it.
Yeah. And yeah, it was a great time to sort of grow up musically.
The collaborative aspect as well is very important in all music, but especially in, you know, this genre. It's without the collaboration, you have nothing. So
absolutely, yeah. And I guess it depends on personalities a bit. I love collaborating. I love working with other people. That's also, I guess, why I went into conducting. But yeah, it's more fun.
More fun.
Is there a role that you prefer, like composing, conducting, playing? What do you tend to lean towards?
I don't play that much anymore, except just for myself and sort of as a part of my composing, and sometimes like in certain situations. But I mostly see myself as a composer because that is sort of what I mostly do, like spend most time on, because it is quite time consuming. Writing for orchestras and soloists and things like that. But I do quite a bit of conducting as well. A lot of it is going and conducting my own music. Like this week, we have a piece of mine on the program as well. So I sort of do that composer-conductor role. Sometimes I will go and just conduct some core classical repertoire as well, but not that often actually. I more do like contemporary music and mixed with maybe some older pieces and my own music. But I guess composer, conductor, and then pianist somewhere a little bit further below.
And I suppose all those kind of skills is, I'm guessing, what found you in the position to work with Rosalía, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you today. So how did you come to work on that project? How did that come about?
It was like these things happen a little bit chaotically and randomly.
Always the case.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually brought in sort of what felt fairly late, just a few weeks before they started recording. And it was through my management, Harrison Parrott, who were in connection with Rosalía's team and organizing this with the London Symphony Orchestra. And they were sort of going into these recordings and were looking for somebody who would be a good candidate to come and conduct the sessions and work with them on that. So I had a video phone call with Noah Goldstein, the producer. And it turned out, funnily, that he had been in Iceland when he was starting out as an intern at the Greenhouse Studios with Valgeir Sigurðsson, who is a great friend of mine and somebody I work with a lot and recorded a lot of stuff at that studio. He was producing Björk's albums at the time, Valgeir. And Noah sort of like wanted to work with Björk's producer and came to Iceland and was sort of making coffee at the greenhouse and overseeing sort of sessions for a few months. So he had that connection, and we really hit it off, and that's not the reason I did the job, but it was like a funny connection. It shows you how small the world sometimes is.
Divine intervention, sort of.
Yeah. So it ended up that I just flew into London and did the sessions.
It was a very quick recording process, wasn't it? Was it about over a week?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of music.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the score stack was like this high. It was admittedly printed on very thick paper, but I think for sort of this kind of project, it was actually quite a lot of time, but when you think about how integral the orchestra is to the album and how much music it is and how many songs and how like detailed it was recorded, it was actually quite quick, and we were really, it had to be quite strict actually with time to get it done. So yeah, I guess it was quite quick in the end. I think maybe three or 4 days of recording, something like that, but quite full days.
Yeah, for an album that feels quite quick.
Yeah.
From our perspective, I guess, who aren't in the industry.
Yeah. How does that process kind of compare then to if you were just creating like your own piece to, play like when your concerts tonight, kind of that fast pace, or that much music? Would you usually take more time to kind of hone in it, or is it very all steam ahead?
Well, it's a slightly different approach sort of to like the piece we're playing now, this is a big orchestral piece. If we would record that, we would probably just do it with the full orchestra and do like a lot of takes, but we would do it in a session if we've been rehearsing it. But what was done for the album was a little bit more sort of what you would also probably do for film and stuff like that, is the orchestra is recorded more in sections.
Yeah.
So you will do like the strings separately and like the woodwinds and the percussion and everything. We did a bit of it together as well. We had like one session where we had the whole orchestra in a different hall and did a few tracks as a whole, which was wonderful to get to do that. But that's also part of why it is time consuming, because like Noah and the producers, they want like really control over everything. So when you record everything together, there is less options to like balance things out and like, let's make this a bit softer and can we hear more of the bass clarinet here? So they do it like more sectional. And it obviously takes more time, but then they also have more possibilities to focus in on the sound and really, and you can hear that in some of the tracks, like where you really get close to some of the instruments. Like there's this contrabass clarinet part in one of the songs, it just like rumbles through, and sort of some really detailed stuff that you can hear, which they sort of get by doing it that way.
Yeah.
And what was that process like for you conducting the orchestra for this record? That, I guess, did you know it was going to be such a big record?
No, I had no idea it was going to be such a good record. I mean, I got the demos obviously a little bit before, so I sort of was able to listen to all the songs, and I immediately realized, yeah, these are like great songs. In her voice, I mean, she had already sung all the vocals, but I think she re-recorded them all. But you can still like, wow, what an amazing album this is going to be, you know. But we still hadn't done it, we hadn't recorded, so it was just like mock-ups that I was hearing. And you never know.
Yeah.
You can never. I don't think anybody, even Rosalía herself and her team, like they didn't know it was going to be such a incredible hit. But I think everybody could feel that it was special, though, and we did our best to make it as good as we could.
Well, I think there's even like a lot of people who maybe weren't aware of her before this album, especially her voice coming through, because I think a lot of maybe her tracks that have gotten, you know, very big, where people be like, oh no, I do know that, is maybe more like techie kind of stuff, where she's maybe just more speaking than singing, but her voice in this is just so beautiful and just prominent, and it really shines through tracks, but as do the orchestral, you know, pieces. I suppose, what was it, was you saying working together, was it a worry of, is one going to outshine the other, or were you doing it as a straight accompaniment for her? Or
yeah, it's all about like realizing her vision of this world that she's creating, and working with her and Noah and everybody to sort of like try to get the right atmosphere, the right sound, the right and she was very involved in the recordings and very much like knew what she wanted, what she didn't want, what she wanted to try. Very open as well to sort of trying things, but very, she already had, I think, a clear idea about all the songs and what she wanted them to accomplish. And I agree about the singing. I think it's so wonderful how vocally expressive this album is, like more, I think, than her previous album, for example. And she's an amazing singer. So like, and I managed to see the show live as well a few weeks ago, and her vocal performance, like the overall show is amazing, but just her vocal performance is unreal. It's so good.
I can imagine.
yeah, I said the other day, I was like, I imagine if she like walked into a room, you'd hear like angels singing behind her as she walked in, because her voice is just heavenly.
It's wonderful.
And then obviously we spoke about how the language is the album is in 13 different languages. Do you think that, because so many listeners they might not speak Spanish, they might not understand everything that is being said, do you think that's where the orchestra plays a big role in kind of conveying that emotion that they wouldn't be able to understand from the lyrics, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that music manages to transcend the sort of language barrier on this album a lot. And then it also gives people the opportunity to dive deeper into the text and like really need to work a little bit harder to understand what she's saying and read some translations. And that's also wonderful. But yeah, I mean, the orchestra sort of unifies the whole album in a way and makes it this sort of thread through the whole album, I think.
We were saying it kind of listens almost more like, obviously it's still very much a record and it's musical, but it almost listens like almost like a drama, like what you would imagine to be on stage in a theatre or something, because it's just so, I don't know, it's just so whole, if that makes sense. Not too little of a word to say.
No, absolutely. I think she sort of taps into that idea of opera and drama and sort of staged drama, and her show also taps into that as well. Definitely sort of transcending the sort of pop song idea and thinking much bigger arc, I think, for this album.
100%. And do you think maybe that after this and after the success of this record, we might see more orchestras being brought into mainstream music?
I really hope so. I think her approach to this and making the orchestra so integral and such a big part of the sound, while still being essentially a pop album, is great. And there are so many possibilities, I think, to use an orchestra in this setting, much more integrated and inventive than is kind of like done 99% of the time. And I hope this album will sort of push people also to make that collaboration more organic and start working with also, exciting composers and arrangers. I mean, this is already happening, of course, but maybe not sort of mainstream. So I'm hoping that will happen. I see this already happening a bit more with choreography. Like I feel like, for example, Rosalía was working with Dimitris Papianou for her show, who's a really amazing contemporary choreographer, and Twigs is working with Damien Jallet for her videos, and I feel like that intersection is becoming more apparent with sort of choreography and pop or like mainstream music, and I think it would be very exciting if that also started to happen more with sort of orchestral contemporary music.
Yeah,
it feels
I think it's already happening. Just me saying it means that it is happening.
Yeah.
Feels like there's more collaboration between different sectors of the arts.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of coming together to produce
almost more
something.
like traditional arts, coming back into, I think maybe we're all sick of our phones. We all want to sit and watch just art on stage and really experience, but even if it is online, we really want to experience something and really feel it. And I think this album was, it just really brought you into it.
Absolutely. And I can't remember the last time somebody was talking about an album in this way. Like not just songs, but really everybody was listening to the album and talking about the album, like the whole thing. Yeah. It was quite unique, I think.
So we were thinking about kind of where we get transported to when listening to albums. And I and Charlotte behind the camera, actually we used to live in Madrid. So when we listen to it, because of all the Spanish and the flamenco aspects, we get transported back to being in Spain and being in tiny little streets. Where do you think listeners will go to when they listen to it?
Well, I think that's the interesting question about music. It's like it happens in everybody's head. It's everybody has their own journey when listening to it. So depending on your musical background, where you are raised, like you will react to different aspects in the music. So, if you are Italian and you grew up listening to opera on your mother's record player, then you will probably connect really strongly to Io Cristo Piange Diamante, for example, which is kind of like sung in Italian and structured like an opera aria, And then for other people, they will have different connections. But I think, there's a lot for everybody in that album. I think.
Does it take you back to the room where you recorded, or do you kind of go somewhere different?
I go somewhere different, I think. I mean, I'm aware of that sort of as a memory, but still, like it was sort of like a blitz in a way. It was like really focused work, and then it was almost a year until the album came out, and I was like not allowed to talk about it, even that I had done this. Like, so I was very excited when the album dropped and to be able to like actually listen to it.
And scream it from the rooftops, like.
And just, and to see like what it had turned into, because, you play a part in something which is obviously a much longer process of creation, and then after we record, it's not like the album is done. They go and work on it and produce it. And she hadn't even finished writing all the lyrics when we were recording. She was still working on some lyrics for some of the songs, and so it's really nice to sort of see something fully formed, that you were a part of like the creation at some point.
And we saw you posted after the release saying that you were really obviously proud to be part of the process, but also that there was a lot of risks taken in kind of the creation of it, and you wished more artists would take, you know, risks and push boundaries a little bit more with work. I suppose, what risks do you want to see happen? Is it that orchestral into mainstream, or what kind of risk, and also you want to take yourself?
Yeah, I think just sort of pushing back to the sort of corporate element of music, and how it's become very difficult to survive as a musician today compared to 30, 40 years ago. Streaming services have been terrible for musicians financially. I mean, they're sort of great for listeners in a way, but at the same time, maybe not so much, we're figuring out now, because the whole playlist sort of economy and
Algorithms and all that.
Algorithms sort of putting things in front of you, and people don't really know a lot of the time what they're listening to anymore. The music has become sort of detached from its creators in a way. So I think when an album like this comes along, where people really sort of sit up and take note of a whole piece of art and really know what it is because something has happened, you know, in the way it's presented, in the way it's created. And of course, a lot of things play into that, but it's just refreshing, I think, to see that. I think there is an appetite for people to go outside of the structure of the single and the sort of playlist curated way of thinking about music, and sort of I mean, this is an old story and a new story, but it's great to see. I mean, yes, we are sick of our phones, I think. People are looking for ways to disconnect from that and sort of the constant dopamine barrage and just really have to focus on something and invest in something.
Yeah.
I think people miss investing in artists and investing in the listening experience and sitting down with a whole album and sort of really getting into it.
Well, we're seeing that with, you know, the upshot in how many people are buying vinyls and things now. People want to own something that they love and really want to sit and listen to it. You know, if you have one that you really love and you sit in a dark room by yourself, the sound just can surround you. And I think there is a massive thing about mindless listening, you know, and so many albums now, songs start to sound almost very similar, and you wonder how much mind is going into that from an artist's perspective, just possibly because of financial reasons of they need to get this done and, you know, get stuff out.
Yeah, and then you have the whole AI music sort of making things even more blurry. But yeah, no, it's I mean, a lot of people have of course talked about this, but the accessibility of music now has cheapened it in a way as well. You know, you can listen to anything, anywhere, at any time, whereas you would have to go and actually buy an album and take it back and put it on your record player. And there was this act of like listening, and you couldn't just access all the music at any time. So there was more like appreciation for that. And you know, I don't know if we'll ever get back to exactly that, but maybe we can find ways of. And I think this is mainly up to the listener, the consumer, you know, and the artists in collaboration, because the corporations are not going to do this. The streaming services are not, unless they feel like there's a huge demand of changing the way things are, then that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of, there's less anticipation and excitement about things because you just have access to it instantly into whatever you want. You don't have to pick one album that you're going to buy because that's what you can afford. You can just consume whatever, which is good in that you get exposed to a lot more music. But
yeah, it definitely has a good side to it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also has some bad sides.
I think even like when we were young, obviously we're like on the cusp of the streaming age and the physical. But like I would get a CD for Christmas. Yeah. And I'd have to pick which one CD that I wanted.
People have so many memories with music, and I think now we're moving into where those memories of music is with live performances, because that's the only way that you can fully immerse yourself in it. How have you found, I suppose, that accessibility affect yourself, affect your music with, you know, streaming and things?
I think just the same way as everybody else. just sort of yeah, it's just harder to focus and for people to focus, and and if you don't have like a huge like machine behind you as an artist that can really push everything, it's very hard to sort of. But you know, but I mean, I feel like I shouldn't be complaining or anything, but I think it's more of a general problem for the music industry that I think people are starting to talk about more now and becoming more aware of. That this is not actually, nobody actually wants this way of consuming in a way, you know, we need to get back to something a little bit different, but hopefully that will happen. We just have to keep talking about it and being aware of it, you know.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about like the resurgence of physical media and like older kind of aspects of music. Do you see a lot more younger people coming to orchestral things now, or do you think they're kind of yet to get to that?
I don't know. I think it's a little bit different from city to city and orchestra to orchestra, and like how they program and what they are doing and their outreach and stuff. And maybe, you know, maybe there's something true that people often come to this music a little bit later and have more time and appreciation to sit and listen to this kind of stuff. But I feel strongly that, you know, if you don't have exposure to it as a child, if you don't know that it exists, if you don't know that there is a symphony orchestra or an opera house or a theater or a dance company, you're less likely to seek it out as an adult. Because often it's just like seeds that are planted for kids. And that's why I feel like it's so important to expose kids to like this whole smorgasbord of the arts. It's that they can actually see what's available. And sometimes something like a little light goes on in somebody's head and they go to a concert. Like, I remember Orri, the former drummer of Sigur Rós, he was always talking about when he went to see Bolero played with the orchestra. And there's, of course, this snare drum going on. And that was just like, he would always talk about that. It was like, you know.
Distinct.
So I love that so much. And he ended up playing drums, you know.
Everyone can kind of pinpoint one moment, can't they? That kind of changed how they view whatever art form it is, music, theatre, dance. There's always something that you can go back to and think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's like a lot of almost like traditional forms of music kind of coming into that knowledge. And I think a lot of it is how you, like you say, how you grow up, what you grow up with. And there's like a lot of very separate, but like kind of folk sounds coming into almost a lot of indie stuff in like, you know, the UK scene at the minute. And it's, if there's going to be a whole new generation that maybe they don't have the traditional like forms, but they have a contemporary version of, you know, the process.
Yeah, absolutely. But then it's also a responsibility of the organizations, the orchestras, the houses to evolve with the times, you know, and meet people in their current reality, and for composers to incorporate technology and make things, you know, current and relevant.
I suppose it's a bit of a big question, but how do you see kind of that future like ahead then? Obviously with this album's been quite a big moment, but how do you see your work and, you know, orchestra work kind of changing with the times then?
Well, I mean, I'm starting to incorporate electronics a lot more in my work, and also just doing these collaborations, working more in the studio, making albums that are not necessarily made for the concert hall, and sort of just going wherever I find exciting.
Does it feel a bit sneaky almost, like kind of going out the comfort zone of?
No, because that is my comfort zone.
Ah, fair enough.
I feel just as comfortable working in the studio and, you know, as with an orchestra. So it's, at least for me, that's not, it doesn't, and I think that's it has to be organic, you know, the artist has to want to do it and feel it. You can never force any change in the arts by a mandate, you know, it always happens, it's always the artist that instigates it somehow, and then it's the organizations need to kind of like find a way to make that happen. They cannot steer anything, like orchestras cannot steer things into a certain way of a future they want to happen. They have to just be open to accepting, like, what are the artists, what are the composers and musicians excited about trying out? How can we make that happen? obviously there's the conversation and there are ideas, and you can dream things up and everything, but it in a way it happens organically. And for me, it's just organic, really. It's just the projects that are most exciting to me are those who are kind of like on the cusp of technology and tradition somehow.
Yeah, and you said about kind of combining techno and orchestral elements together. Kind of how do you envision that? Because we read about that and we were quite interested in what that would look like, what that would sound like.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily a full orchestra. For me, like when I was thinking about that, it's more just like I would love to use my sensibility of like writing for instruments and like even just prepared piano and stuff like that to make something that, is more in the sort of dance music or like harder world. And I think I will do that in the next few years. I don't know exactly how or what that will look like, but yeah, I just think when you have experience of working and writing a lot for orchestra and doing a lot of contemporary music, and then you also work with a lot of people who are doing more like electronic stuff, pop music and stuff, then it becomes quite clear how you could envision like bringing those together in some way.
Yeah, it's almost again that it has to come from an organic perspective.
Yeah.
And again, going back to music, not only being a universal language across, countries and multiple people, but also through genre and being able to use your skills and, your creativity into kind of anything to create something that we don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. Going into the unknown.
I guess it's important to like branch out and try things that people haven't tried, and because you never know what's going to work, do you?
No.
Might be the next.
No, you have to be prepared to fail trying. Like you don't know, like nobody ever knows what's going to be successful or not, but you just go where your curiosity takes you and what you believe in and what you think is worthwhile. Yeah. You can never actually quite tell, but if you're excited about it yourself, then odds are somebody else might also be excited about it.
Are there any kind of, huge songs or albums or just things that you love that maybe don't have this element to it that you would love to put some orchestral stuff in? Because I'm a big fan of like The Who, and they've used quite a few like orchestras in their music, and I always think that's their best stuff is when they kind of incorporate that. So have you got anything that you would be like, when you listen to it, you're like, I could pop something in there?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I've never actually, I don't actually sort of listen, I think, to music so much and think like, oh, there really should be an orchestra in there.
It's less you'd be like, I should be on this track. Maybe not what you're thinking. That's what we're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, all the time I was like, why am I not on this track? Where's the orchestra? I think, but I mean, yeah, definitely. Sometimes you hear like, oh, this could. I mean, there's some songs that you just think, I would love to just like arrange this. Such a beautiful song, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, nothing you're gonna start taking over and put your own thing in.
No, I don't think so. Well, never say never.
Never know.
Into the unknown, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all we've got time for. But thank you so much for chatting us.
Yeah, thank you.
And enjoy your concert again tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll hear you on more records soon.
Yeah. I hope so.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's podcast. We'll be back next Thursday.
For now, keep up to date with the magazine on our socials at Artists Decide, and you may even get some hints for the next album we'll be looking at.
See you next week.
No, it's a nice piano.
Yeah, I guess when it's a
Steinway Grand. Yeah.